Today we're taking a look at a mixed martial arts book that specializes in clinch fighting. Hi guys, my name is Joe and welcome to Fighting Words, the martial arts library. On this channel, I review martial arts books and talk about other martial arts related subjects. The subject of today's review is No Holds Barred Fighting, The Clinch by Mark Hatmaker, published in 2006. About the author, I've covered Mr. Hatmaker on here before. He specializes in Western martial arts, boxing, wrestling, old school boxing and wrestling. The book itself is designed for practitioners of both submission grappling and no holds barred fighting, which today would be mixed martial arts. I don't see a whole lot in this volume that would be specifically no holds barred or the pre-rules days of mixed martial arts. In this book, Mr. Hatmaker focuses on three particular kinds of clinch. One is the head clinch, which many people will know as the quote-unquote Muay Thai clinch. Mr. Hatmaker prefers to use a different gripping method, whereas typically in Muay Thai, one will simply stack the hands on top of one another. He prefers to use a palm-to-palm grip and put a little bit of pressure on the opponent's neck. He also covers the collar and elbow grip, which, just like the titles would suggest, one is gripping the collar portion of the opponent or the back of their neck, as well as the elbow portion or their upper arm, basically. And finally, the clinch that gets the most attention in this book is the over-under clinch. So you and your opponent are basically hugging one another. You're going over one of their arms and under the other. So Mr. Hatmaker covers the basic clinch positions here, including some details. For instance, when it comes to the collar and elbow, he notes that in a more pure grappling situation, one might prefer to drive one's head into the opponent's head, whereas in a situation where strikes are included, it might be a better idea to bury one's face in the opponent's shoulder in order to basically hide their face from the opponent's strikes. Following that, we get a chapter on clinch conditioning. Mr. Hatmaker shows two exercises here. One is the free squat or Hindu squat. The other is the dive bomber push-up. And he suggests that by performing each of these with the squat, one will get used to the idea of changing levels while in the clinch. And with the dive bomber push-up, one will get used to building up the endurance in the shoulder girdle. Following that is a very brief chapter on what one might consider strategy or tips. He basically says it's okay to disagree. In other words, if your opponent wants to clinch you in a certain way, you don't have to agree to that. He suggests that you try to get the clinch that is optimal for you, regardless of what your opponent does. Following that, we get a couple of chapters on movement. This includes footwork, including linear and circling footwork, as well as, when I say movement, pummeling, which is changing positions inside the clinch. Again, this chapter has a few good points. For instance, for the head clinch, he suggests going in one arm at a time, because if you go in with both arms, you don't have anything to protect you from strikes. The first technique section we get into is on striking in these various clinch positions. Because of the nature of the clinch positions, the focus tends to be on lower body strikes, primarily in the form of knee strikes and some short chopping style kicks. Mr. Hatmaker will generally show defense against these immediately following the offensive section. So we get offense and defense for the head clinch, offense only for the collar and elbow, and then offense and defense for the over-under. For the collar and elbow section, what we get are what he sometimes, in some of his other media, refers to as inserts. So, for example, the collar grip, you can use a short little forearm strike by basically straightening your arm out over the guy's shoulder He also shows shoulder strikes from that position. We also get some upper body strikes and some dirty tactics in the over-under clinch. The over-under clinch, we get punches and elbows as far as the upper body strikes, but we also get things like elbow wrenches, and he will also show smothering the opponent, where it's exactly what it sounds like. You take one of your hands and you put it in front of their nose and mouth. Following that is a chapter on takedowns. While he does include some takedowns from the head clinch and the collar and elbow position, the focus is on the over and under position, and he has subchapters for the takedowns on that. For the head clinch, we get a technique that he calls a rollout, so you're basically wrenching on the guy's neck and throwing him to the ground. For the collar and elbow, the focus is on getting to a single leg position, and he shows some setups for that. Now, for the over-under section, like I said, it's subdivided into many other sections. We begin with trips. He seems to prefer a back heel trip similar to an osotogari from this position. Immediately following that is a chapter on flying mares and arm throws. This includes a Greco-Roman style arm spin. That's followed by a chapter on hip throws, and this includes a variety of grips for these hip throws. Following that is a chapter on headlock throws, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's throws from the side headlock position. After that is a section on arm drags and go-behinds, and this is a bit of a grab bag. He will show some explicit throws from some of these positions. He does show from a 2-on-1 position, basically dragging the guy to the ground by forcing his shoulder to the mat. After that is a brief chapter on body lock throws. In this case, these are throws that begin with a body lock, but they're basically hip throws in that you're rolling the guy over your hip. After that, we get a chapter on the use of the whizzer for some of these throws. And finally, the chapter on throws and takedowns wraps up with a section on duck unders. This is mostly how to create an opportunity to get a duck under where you can sort of slide behind the opponent, but he will also include a fireman's carry from this position. After that section on takedown and throw offense, we get a section on defense. This mostly focuses on the headlock style throws as well as defenses if someone gets a back body lock on you or a body clinch. This actually includes a couple of submissions from the body lock. He shows a rolling knee bar, and from a collar and elbow that is meant to lead into a headlock, he will actually show kind of a falling Jujikatame style armbar. Following that, we get a section on the back cast throws, which are more colloquially known as suplexes. And this section begins with an extensive chapter on solo and partner drills, as well as some conditioning exercises. He gives a total of 6 steps to getting to the point where you can actually get this throw. As one might imagine, this includes a lot of variations of bridging, again, with partners and without partners. After that section on conditioning for the throw, we get how to throw someone when you're chest to chest, when you got him off to the side, as well as throws from the back. Again, these are high amplitude throws. They are potentially devastating if you can land them. Most of the variation in this comes from the front position and the different grips that he will use before executing the back cast throw. The book more or less finishes up with the next 2 chapters on how to counter first the front back cast throw and then the back cast throw, so when your opponent's behind you. These will resemble, in a lot of cases, defenses against a bear hug, also defenses against being lifted. The book wraps up with a couple of pages on resources that one can look into and a brief index. As far as the prose go, I think a lot of good principles are included at the front of the book. I think that another good benefit is the variety that we get here. While we're only looking at 3 different clinch positions, we are getting from those positions various strikes, throws, takedowns, pummeling, so changing position, takedown defenses. I also appreciate that it covers an area of fighting that goes overlooked a lot of times. You know, people get enamored with striking and with the finishing techniques on the ground, and even books on throws don't have a whole lot on how to position oneself for the throws. So I appreciate that this book covers that arena. As far as the cons go, I think it could have had more on the collar and elbow section as well as the head clinch. With that being said, the author himself points out that a lot of the collar and elbow stuff is found in his book on takedowns, which I've covered previously. There will also be a little bit of redundancy here when it comes to his No Holds Barred striking book, which again, I've covered previously. So not an abundance of crossover, I'd say. If you want to see more stuff on the collar and elbow, check out his takedown book. If you want to see more stuff on the head clinch, you can check out his striking book. As far as recommendations go, I think this fits in pretty well with his other No Holds Barred series. I would even say for a No Holds Barred environment and mixed martial arts environment, this is probably more important to get than the book on takedowns, although again, I think it has a lot of good information on there and a lot of good defenses. But given the current meta, I think that we're seeing a lot of outside striking and we're seeing a lot of clinch work. I also think if you are just generally unfamiliar with the clinch, it's good to have a book like this in isolation. So again, you can see, okay, so when I find myself in the clinch, what do I do from here? Because again, it's not an area that's covered by an abundance of styles. And even when it is, it's usually, like in Muay Thai, you will mostly focus on head clinch for the use of strikes. In wrestling, you will mostly focus on like a more lower clinch or a collar and elbow position, mostly to set up takedowns. Rarely will you get sort of that hybrid of like, okay, I'm in the over-under, how can I hit the guy from here? That's all I have for this week. If you guys would like to sponsor a video or help support the channel, please consider donating to my Ko-fi account. If you like what I do on here, please leave a like. Feel free to subscribe. This is one more in my summer of sport that I'm working on right now. So during the summer months, I am doing book reviews on the more competitive side of martial arts. Once again, thank you for following along, and I'll see you later.